question you should consider is, like, does using simple messaging UI make it cheaper, faster, or easier for your customers to make progress in their lives? Can they talk to your product in a human way? One specific implication is, if use of your product is triggered by a conversation taking place in a different product, maybe you should just go to that different product and be in that conversation. If me and you are talking about ordering a pizza, maybe Domino's should, well, not Domino's, but maybe a good pizza company should be in that conversation too. Now, one interesting thing that, like, kind of surprises and frustrates me a little bit is, like, when I was learning to program, we used to build programs like this all the time. You would type in commands and things would get spat back and you'd say yes or no, and lo and behold, you'd be all set. And we consider that shit today to be old school, right? Command line, boring, blah, blah, blah. For some reason, when we do something slightly similar here, it somehow gets a different reaction, right? People literally shit their pants when they see this, right? And because, for me, that's just like, how is that not just a command line? And, like, it is just a command line. But like Sarah said, it's the command line for normal humans, not for, like, the rest of us, the people who grew up learning things like ZSH and shit. This is, like, for normal people, which is incredibly powerful. But didn't we move away from command line for a reason? Is another question I consistently ask myself. Like, shouldn't we be ashamed? Is this not a failure of UI? Is this not just like going through Monkey Island all over again, in a sense, right? And the most common criticism you'll hear along these lines is, well, look at this, through conversational UI data, it takes 73 taps to order a pizza. And I'm like, it does. That is correct. And yes, you can order a Domino's pizza, or whoever you want. It doesn't have to be Domino's. You can order that within 5 taps. I 100% agree, right? In the same way I agree that, like, the remote control on the left here can actually mute, can mute the saturation of the screen with one single button, and the remote on the right can't. But that's not the right way to think about usability. It's not just, can everything be done on a button? It's, can everything be learned and discovered quickly by people who want to do it? Not everything is worth learning. And your product can use a UI that your users don't need to learn because they already know it. Or you can ask them to learn a new one. So a question you should ask yourself is, would a familiar UI make it cheaper, faster, or easier for your customers to make progress in their lives? And then other implications of that are things like, are you asking them to learn a UI for no good reason, or like how to navigate your site for no good reason? Or would customers see any value in knowing how to use your product, or like knowing how to navigate your site? And if they won't, why would they bother? Why shouldn't you just be in that conversation or just communicate with them through chat? That's what they want. Now, the one area where this isn't true is when you're actually selling your software, when that is literally what you're selling. And everyone probably thinks they're selling software, but I'll just clarify. There's a difference between using software to sell a product and selling software that is the product. In the former case, you could be selling shoes and just using some dope React UI, right? In the latter, you're actually selling permission to use the product, as in you want to log into this thing every day and do your job. And from a customer's point of view, there's a difference between a customer using software to buy their product, as in using your store to buy their product, or buying software to get their job done. When they want to use your product to get their job done, they will want to learn the best UI that makes it most powerful so they can make most progress in their life. But the rest of the time, when they just want the pizza, they don't want to learn that you've got a fucking radial menu to order pizzas, or you've got some new touchy shit. That's not what they're interested in. They would love to say, pizza please, pepperoni done. Next problem. So, and the last shift is briefly what Paul spoke about earlier, but I'll just recap quickly. An interesting trend and an implication of what Paul covered is this idea that your product is not a set of screens, and it's not a set of user flows or journeys or jobs to be done. These are very antiquated ways of building software. The best way to think about it is your product is a system. And to give you an example of why we talk about systems a lot, I was really I've always been really impressed with this diagram that Paul drew for me of Facebook. He said, Facebook is a system. There's stories, and stories can appear on a newsfeed, on a timeline, or on a page. And I was like, no, because you've got Spotify in there, you've got all these like photos, you've got blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, they're all just stories. Like me listening to a song on Spotify, that's a story, and it appears on a page, or it appears in a group, or it appears... And I realized, obviously he was right. Obviously he was right, because he was working there. But like, it was quite stunning to me how such a complex product is actually such a simple system. And I began to think about this more, and one of our researchers drew this diagram to explain Instagram to me, which I loved, which is Instagram is a system. You take a photo of a cat, you apply a filter, and people can like or comment on that cat. But the real value in thinking in systems is that how, when, and where users want to interact with your product will always change. And if you're doing your job right, some of your best customers might not even use your app or your product, which is really weird. And this didn't become clear to me until I met an Intercom customer who said, hey, Des, love the product, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, what do you use it for? And he goes, oh, I don't actually use the product. And I was like, oh, right, so is it the blog or whatever? He's like, no, I mean, he's like, I use the product, but I don't use the product. And I was like, oh, Jesus, not one of these. But his point was, it actually made sense. He was using our Facebook integration and replying to customers through Slack, and as a result, he never logged into the thing that we have 120 people lovingly working on in Dublin, and which would break their heart. But it is true, like that. If you think of these things as a system, you can get those use cases that you didn't really think about. If we thought about Intercom as being a screen plus like email notifications and other bits and pieces, then when something like Facebook Messenger for Business launches, we'd be like, uh-oh, we need to go and redesign the entire product again. But when you think of it as a system, you're just like, oh, well, that's cool. Facebook's just another way in which people can communicate with customers. And it's a system, it just fits into the system. So yeah, now we can receive tweets, or now we can receive Facebook messages, and we can receive emails, and people can reply through Slack, or through email, or through push, whatever. It's simpler when you have it as a system, because you don't have to constantly redesign things. So the last question and implication here is, like, would making your product usable through all mediums, through all inputs and outputs, would that make it cheaper, faster, easier for your customers to make progress in their lives? And if it would, then you need to think about that, because it means that you won't be surprised by things like, a watch app comes out, or Amazon Echo wants to integrate with you. If you have a system, you don't have to worry about it, because they're just all different ways things can come into your product. And that does mean that we might be looking at like a post-app world, but that's not actually a problem. That's like, we're not like app managers. We're not out in this to build apps. We're in this to build like value for customers, to help them make progress in their lives. So I think as like founders, as support people, marketers, as product managers, all the folks who are here in the room specifically, we have this job, this unspoken job, and it's not down as a bullet on your job description, which is be mindful of all the different technological shifts that are happening in the industry, and be consistently, perpetually asking yourselves, do these things actually affect us? Can they help our customers make progress in their lives? And I think, or I hope, if we do that, then maybe we can stay alive. I hope this has been useful. I've been Des. Thanks very much.